What if I told you that one of Johnny Depp's deepest regrets has nothing to do with courtroom battles, celebrity scandals, or even his wildest roles, but everything to do with love? A quiet kind of love. The kind you don't realize is rare, until it's gone. Yep. We're talking about Vanessa Paradis. Their love story didn't unfold in the pages of tabloids or through flashy Hollywood announcements. It existed, instead, in the spaces between fame. Quiet breakfasts in Paris, shared glances at film festivals, whispered encouragements backstage at gigs, and bedtime stories read to their children. A love that was quietly powerful, almost sacred in its intimacy. And now, as time has weathered the romance, Depp's reflections have begun to seep through the cracks, revealing a deep ache, a lingering regret about a woman who once grounded him in a world that never stopped spinning. When we rewind Johnny's timeline to the early 2000s, we see a man whose fame was already cemented in the pantheon of Hollywood legends. From his brooding performance in Edward Scissorhands to his quirky, unforgettable Captain Jack Sparrow in Pirates of the Caribbean, Depp was universally admired. But behind the scenes, away from the characters and costumes, was a man craving stability, something real and unscripted. Enter Vanessa Paradis, a French singer and actress whose allure wasn't rooted in glamour, but in authenticity. She was everything the Hollywood machine was not, earthy, enigmatic, and incredibly grounded. Their paths crossed in 1998 in Paris, and according to Depp, the connection was instantaneous. In interviews over the years, he's described the moment. He first saw her, her back turned, a red dress clinging to her form in the warm breeze, as like being hit by a lightning bolt. It wasn't a flirtation. It was an awakening. For a man who had long been synonymous with artistic chaos and romantic turbulence, meeting Vanessa was like finding a melody that finally harmonized with his own. She didn't try to fix him. She just accepted him, understood him, and loved him with a quiet strength that disarmed his defenses. They quickly built a life together, not defined by marriage vows, but by commitment. Depp often spoke about how they never needed a piece of paper to validate their love. They were together in every way that mattered. In France, far from the Hollywood spotlight, they raised 2 children, Lily Rose and Jack, shielding them from the suffocating scrutiny of fame. Their home life was described by Depp as a haven, filled with music, laughter, and a deep appreciation for art and nature. Vanessa was not just his partner, she was his compass. Her presence stabilized him, providing a sanctuary that allowed him to evolve not just as an artist, but as a father and man. But life, as it often does, began to complicate that picture. As Johnny's career surged, the demands became relentless. Roles piled up, interviews were constant, and his return to the limelight put strain on the very foundation of their quiet life. The delicate balance between public life and private. Love started to shift. He was away more often, shooting on location, engaging with studios, attending events. And slowly, subtly, the distance between him and Vanessa widened. Not because of any betrayal, but because life pulled them in different directions. They began speaking different emotional languages. The connection that once felt effortless began requiring more effort, more communication, more intentionality. Things that can easily get lost in the whirlwind of celebrity life. When Johnny talks about the unraveling of their relationship, there is no bitterness, no blame, only regret. In a rare interview, he confessed, "She gave me everything. She gave me stability, a family, a reason to come home, and I didn't always see it. I got swept up in the madness." There's a visible sorrow when he recalls those years. Not because he's trying to rewrite history, but because he's finally acknowledging the things he wishes he'd held on to tighter. "I wasn't always the man I wanted to be," he admitted, "and she deserved that man every day." The tragedy of their parting wasn't dramatic, it was gradual. A slow fading out rather than a sudden explosion. Depp described it as a drift, a gentle but steady current pulling them apart. He said, "There wasn't one big fight, no betrayal. It was quieter than that. We just stopped connecting the way we used to. It was like waking up and realizing you're living parallel lives instead of intertwined ones." That kind of loss is often harder to grieve. There's no clear villain, no single moment to blame, just a series of missed opportunities, unspoken words, and days that slipped by without tenderness. Despite their separation, Vanessa never publicly disparaged him. Quite the opposite. When Depp was later embroiled in lawsuits and defamation battles that captivated the world's attention, Vanessa submitted a statement on his behalf. In it, she called him a kind, attentive, generous, and nonviolent person and father. These weren't empty words. They were the testimony of someone who had known him in his most intimate and unguarded moments. She defended him not because she had to, but because she knew his heart. Her loyalty stood in stark contrast to the vitriol swirling around his name in the media, and that perhaps speaks volumes about the bond they shared, even in separation. What strikes you when hearing Johnny talk about Vanessa isn't just nostalgia. It's remorse. Deep, unshakable remorse. He knows that he lost something real, something grounding. "She was my anchor," he said, "and I let go of the rope." That admission doesn't come easy for someone who's spent most of his life being larger than life. In a world where egos are often inflated and apologies are rare, Depp's vulnerability is disarming. There's an almost universal relatability to his regret. Haven't we all, at some point, taken someone for granted? Haven't we all assumed that love would be patient with our absences, forgiving of our emotional laziness, and resilient through our chaos? But love isn't just something you feel. It's something you do. And when you stop doing, it stops being. Johnny learned that the hard way. He admitted, "I thought it would always be there. That no matter how far I drifted, she'd still be there waiting." But that's not fair to anyone. Vanessa, for her part, has moved on with grace. She's continued her music and acting career in France, maintaining the same dignified silence she always had about her personal life. She's never used their relationship for publicity, never cashed in on the fame. She's lived her truth, quietly, respectfully, and that dignity only seems to make Johnny's regret more poignant. "She never asked for the spotlight," he said. "She just wanted a good life, and I complicated that." When asked in an interview what he would say to Vanessa now, after all the years, after all the trials and triumphs, Johnny's voice reportedly grew quiet. He paused, and then with a soft tremble he said, "Thank you for loving the version of me I didn't even like." That kind of gratitude, raw and reflective, comes from someone who has finally come to terms with what they lost. Not because it was taken, but because they didn't hold it close enough. The story of Johnny Depp and Vanessa Paradis doesn't follow the arc of a typical Hollywood love affair riddled with tabloid chaos or explosive betrayals. Instead, it's a far more tender and relatable narrative, one rooted in quiet devotion, subtle erosion, and the ache of realizing too late that something precious has slipped away. It speaks not only to celebrity lives, but to something universally human. Theirs was not a love lost in flames, but in distance and the soft, nearly imperceptible fraying of emotional ties. It didn't end with scandal. It faded with time, with silence, with two people growing apart even as they remained side by side. When Johnny speaks about Vanessa now, there's no animosity in his voice. There's no effort to shift blame or disguise regret in bravado. Instead, there's something strikingly raw in his tone, a kind of quiet reverence, almost sacred, for a woman who once knew the deepest parts of him. You can hear it in the way he chooses his words, measured, careful. He doesn't romanticize the past, but he doesn't run from it either. He honors it, and in doing so he paints a picture not of a failed relationship, but of a deeply human experience, the kind most people have lived in some form or another. It's easy to assume that someone as wildly famous as Johnny Depp would be immune to the ordinary struggles of love. But the truth is, fame doesn't exempt anyone from emotional distance. If anything, it intensifies it. In his own words, Johnny has admitted that his career, the relentless travel, the pressures of public life, and his own internal demons created a wall between him and Vanessa, one that slowly, over time, became too high to climb. There was no explosion, no sudden break, just a gradual, heartbreaking drift, the kind that happens when conversations become routine, when touch becomes less frequent, when priorities quietly shift and connection quietly dies. What makes this story so deeply resonant is its simplicity. At its core, it's about someone who took love for granted, not maliciously, but because he believed, like many do, that the foundation was strong enough to weather anything. But love, even the truest kind, demands tending. It needs presence, not just physical, but emotional. It needs awareness, effort, and the humility to acknowledge its fragility. Johnny now recognizes that he didn't offer those things enough, and the weight of that realization is something he carries with him, years after the relationship ended. Vanessa Paradis wasn't just a partner. She was a grounding force. She provided a quiet, enduring kind of support that stood in contrast to the chaos of Depp's world. She wasn't interested in the limelight or the accolades. She was focused on their children, their home, and the life they built outside the public eye. And even after their separation, she never used her voice to add to the noise. She defended him when few others would. She called him kind and generous when his character was being dissected in courtrooms and tabloids. That loyalty, unwavering and unasked for, says more about their bond than any red carpet photo ever could. It's clear that Johnny feels a profound sense of gratitude for her, but also a haunting sense of loss, not just for Vanessa herself, but for the time they spent together that can never be reclaimed, for the quiet mornings, the shared laughter, the life they built for their children. There's a particular kind of sorrow that comes not from betrayal, but from absence, realizing you let something beautiful fade, not because you didn't care, but because you thought you had more time. When Johnny Depp uttered those painfully honest words, "She gave me the most important thing in my life, our children. I'll never stop caring for her. I messed up. I wasn't there enough. I took things for granted." He wasn't just making a personal confession. He was peeling back the curtain on a deeply formative period of his life. In that moment, he wasn't only speaking about Vanessa Paradis as a woman he once loved, he was reflecting on an entire era, a time when life seemed simpler, more grounded, and filled with a different kind of meaning, one that fame and fortune couldn't replicate. He was speaking from the place of a man who had finally come to terms with the consequences of emotional absence and the quiet, slow disintegration of a once beautiful connection. Those words carried the weight of years. They revealed the burden of hindsight, the clarity that only comes when the damage has already been done and the dust has long settled. For Johnny, the pain wasn't just about losing a relationship. It was about losing the sense of self that had been tied to that relationship. Vanessa wasn't just a partner. She was a witness to his most vulnerable moments, a steady presence during years of turbulence, and the mother of the two people he loves most in the world. To acknowledge that he let that bond weaken, not through malice but through neglect, is to acknowledge the fragility of love itself. What makes this admission so deeply resonant is its truthfulness. It's something many people have felt but rarely voice, that love, no matter how genuine, cannot survive in the shadows. It can't be assumed or left unattended. It has to be practiced every day, through small acts of kindness, consistent attention, and the willingness to stay emotionally connected even when life becomes overwhelming. Johnny's regret isn't that he stopped loving Vanessa, it's that he didn't consistently show that love. That he let external pressures and personal demons take priority over the quiet strength of their partnership. The truth is, no one sets out to destroy something meaningful. The erosion of a relationship is often imperceptible in the moment. You miss a conversation here, you forget an anniversary there, you postpone a heartfelt talk because you're too tired or distracted. And then one day you wake up and realize that the person you once couldn't live without feels like a stranger. That realization can be devastating, especially when you know that the love never truly left, you just stopped tending to it. Johnny's words are a powerful reminder that emotional presence is everything. You can be in the same room with someone and still make them feel alone. You can share a life, but not share your heart. And eventually, even the strongest bond can fade if it's not continually fed. His recognition of this is not just a personal reckoning, it's a universal truth. Relationships don't fall apart all at once. They unravel thread by thread through neglect, distraction, and the silent belief that there will always be more time. And for Johnny, there wasn't. That chapter closed, but its lessons remain, carved into memory, etched in the faces of the children they raised together, and echoed in every word of love and regret he now speaks. There's a heavy kind of beauty in that confession, a man laying bare his soul not to gain sympathy, but to offer truth. And in that truth is a universal message. So many people live with quiet regrets. The things they didn't say, the hugs they didn't give, the nights they chose work or distraction over connection. Johnny's story is not an outlier. It's a reflection. A mirror for anyone who has looked back at a relationship and thought, if only I'd tried harder. If only I'd been more present. There's something almost poetic about how Vanessa remained. An anchor in his life, even after the romantic aspect of their relationship had ended. She didn't turn away. She didn't speak ill. Instead, she reminded the world of who Johnny was beneath the headlines, something she only could have done if she had truly known him at his core. And maybe that's what makes this story so enduring. It's not just about lost love. It's about enduring respect, about the permanence of shared history, and about the bittersweet ache of having loved someone so deeply that their presence never really leaves you, even after they're gone. When Johnny paused during that recent interview and said, "Thank you for loving the version of me I didn't even like." It wasn't just a line, it was a eulogy, not for a person, but for a past self, for a man who was loved through his chaos, for a relationship that, while it didn't last forever, left a forever mark. That sentence carries the weight of years, of mistakes made, of time lost, of love misunderstood but deeply felt. It's the kind of sentiment that doesn't ask for redemption, just remembrance. And that's the ultimate takeaway. We don't always get to fix what we broke. Some relationships end not because they weren't real, but because they weren't protected. Johnny Depp's reflection isn't just a confession. It's a plea to anyone listening to not make the same mistake, to cherish what you have while you still have it, to recognize that the quiet moments often hold the loudest meaning. So, yes, the story of Johnny and Vanessa isn't a Hollywood tragedy, it's something more profound. It's a reminder that love isn't just about passion or grand gestures, it's about presence. It's about showing up, even when it's inconvenient. It's about noticing the drift before it becomes a canyon. And when it's gone, it's about honoring it, not with bitterness, but with gratitude. Because some love stories don't end with happily ever after. Some end with a whispered thank you and a lifelong echo of what once was. If you've ever had a love that slipped through your fingers, not because you didn't care, but because you thought you had more time, then you understand. If you've ever lain awake at night thinking about someone you didn't treat the way they deserved to be treated, then you're not alone. And if you've ever whispered thank you to the memory of someone who once held your heart, then you already know what Johnny feels every time he thinks of Vanessa Paradis. Now, I'd love to hear from you. Have you ever had a relationship you look back on and wish you'd done things differently? Or maybe someone you never really stopped loving? Drop it in the comments. I read them all. And if this story moved you, you have to check out our video on Johnny's biggest regret involving his daughter, Lily Rose. It's raw, it's real, and it shows a whole different side of the man behind the legend. If you enjoyed this video and want more celebrity stories that go deeper than the headlines, give us a like, hit that subscribe button, and tap the bell, so you never miss what's next. Thanks for watching, and remember, some stories aren't about endings, they're about the things we carry with us forever.